the big story that started off this week is the Nintendo Switch Pro announcement, which did not happen.
Whoa,
Which did not happen.
Hold up. Did not happen.
Did not happen. Instead, what we had was something entirely different. John, what the hell happened?
So I first want to ask everyone, are we going to call this the Switch, or actually the SOLED, the Switch OLED, SOLED?
You DM'd me this a while back.
I did.
And I was not a fan. I don't know if other people are on board with this deal, but SOLED does not stick with me.
Not feeling SOLED? All right. So, no, we did not get a Switch Pro, even though it was rumored. It has been rumored since pretty much the Switch came out. We did not get it. We did get the Switch OLED model. That is what it's called. It's not as confusing as new Nintendo Switch, new 3DS, anything like that. So, quick just overview. This thing dropped on Tuesday out of nowhere, like Nintendo does, and we're getting a brand new screened Switch. Coming out October 8th, it's got a 7-inch OLED with the body is mostly unchanged. We're getting better speakers. The wider kickstand, which I've been reading that people who've gotten the hands on absolutely love this wide kickstand. We double the internal storage, so that measly 32 gigs that most of our phones have more internal storage than that, pumping up to 64. Nintendo's really giving it to us. The fun one that I actually find interesting is that the dock with the new OLED Switch, we're getting an actual dedicated LAN port, Ethernet port, whatever you want to call it. White is the new color. Everyone's got white systems. Nintendo was like, you know what? Let's jump on this party and let's do it as well. And it is coming in at $50 more, US at least, at $349.99.
Mm-hmm. Stung.
From the announcement, Doug Bowser said the new Nintendo Switch OLED model is a great option for players who want to experience the new vibrant screen when playing in handheld and tabletop mode. With the addition of this new model, the Nintendo Switch family of systems, people have an additional choice of a system that best fits the gaming experience they desire, whether it's a Nintendo Switch OLED model, Nintendo Switch, or Nintendo Switch Lite. Finn, how do you feel about the Nintendo Switch OLED model?
Was initially bummed. Really bummed when I heard this news. I feel like in the instant that I read the press release, the tweet, my Switch feels like it aged 10 years. It's just a thing where, I guess I hyped myself up, John. I was expecting something to come that didn't ever come. It's one of those... It struck me as a weird Nintendo decision, and then I couldn't really decide if it was me who was the weird one for trying to force this on Nintendo, trying to make myself believe, but ultimately by the end of it, I was just like, man, my Switch is just going to feel really old. And like, I had this in my head where like, by the time we play Breath of the Wild 2, by the time we play Pokemon Legends, I'll be playing it on a better system. And there are no performance improvements, no internal performance improvements on the system. It is purely a screen upgrade and a LAN port. It just screams to me that this should have been what the Switch was initially. And I don't know why it wasn't. It's just one of those weird Nintendo things where they seem to lag behind in some areas and blaze new trails on others. But ultimately, I think, like most people, when I read this on Twitter, I was just really disappointed.
I've ran the gamut of emotion on this one. I'll be honest. Like, I was like, oh, all right, you know what? Nintendo does what Nintendo does. Whatever you want to do, I'll go along on this magical journey. And then I got really kind of weirdly upset for a little bit because I was like, this is stupid. I'm with you. Like, why wasn't this the original Nintendo Switch? OLED has been not a staple, but like pretty definitive in a lot of our like phones and tablets and stuff like that. So I don't understand why we didn't get that to begin with. The 32 gigs of internal storage is laughable. I mean, when we found out when Breath of the Wild took up over half of that, everyone knew you had to get a micro SD card anyway. So now at least you can have Breath of the Wild and one extra game with the 64 gigs. I find it interesting that this thing is actually a little wider by like 0.1 inch.
It's such a weird metric.
Why like the thing actually has the screen size ratio on the actual Switch right now. You're getting 0.8 inches of an OLED screen. That's what you're getting. I don't understand. I really am excited, weirdly fascinated about the idea that this thing is 0.1 inch wider.
Yeah, when I was
How much does that screw up? Oh,
when I was picturing the imaginary Switch Pro in my head, I thought like, I'm sure the remote was this, but in my head I was picturing just the normal Switch we had, but the bezels are gone. It's just bezel-less.
Yeah,
and pretty much that.
That's
so
what
that
I was
would add
at
it on like a few inches. I don't know, maybe like a half an inch. But looking at this design, like other than the dock looks like a bigger upgrade than the actual system.
Yeah,
it looks a bit slicker, but like the actual system just looks like a Switch. I couldn't tell apart
too.
from another.
The dock is thinner. It's smaller.
Yeah,
that one blows my mind. I'm like,
the OG
all right, cool.
dock felt like a toy, which I think they were going for, but it does not feel like a... And that's part of the thing that ages us as well. It does feel a lot more like a handheld now than it did when it was like a hybrid when it came out. This feels like a handheld system at this point when you're in the world of PS5s and Series X's.
And I think that's by design. Like, so I went down the rabbit hole when it comes to this, like, hardcore about like how did we get here? Because on the internet there's like people are very, very upset by this idea. Like, it wasn't the Switch Pro we got promised. The Switch Pro, we didn't get it. And I was like, okay, how did we get to this point? And I'm going to blame Bloomberg right now. Lightly blame Bloomberg. Please don't sue me, Bloomberg. Jason Schreier, I love you. But I started really like digging in, where did these reports come from? And a lot of them actually came from Bloomberg. Like in 2020, August 2020, Bloomberg reports that Nintendo is considering an updated Switch with improved processing and 4K graphics coming in early 2021. Then, September 2020, Bloomberg reports Nintendo is telling third-party devs to make their games 4K ready. Quote from IGN, which pulled from Bloomberg, because Bloomberg you have to pay to actually read their stuff. Third-party developers have reportedly been asked to make their games 4K ready, which implies the company is at least considering a model of the console that can output at higher resolution than the Switch is currently capable of. Bloomberg in March 2021 reporting Nintendo is using a new NVIDIA graphics card chip for the 2021 Switch upgrade. The new Switch iteration will support NVIDIA Deep Learning Super Sampling, or DLSS, a novel rendering technology that uses artificial intelligence to deliver high-fidelity graphics more efficiently. That will allow the console, which is also set for an OLED upgrade, to reproduce game visuals at 4K quality when plugged into a TV. And the people who asked not to be identified because the plan is still being worked on. And then May and June, more Bloomberg saying, hey, they're going to announce this thing right before E3. So I follow where, like, you're upset, people are upset, I got a little upset. And then I thought about Nintendo and what Nintendo does. And I just registered this is exactly what they wanted to do. The chip shortage had to push this to where they don't want the 4K graphics or anything like that, because they stopped caring about what the other consoles are doing and just doing their own thing. The OLED is cool. I like the idea of being able to see more colors and all that fun stuff, but it's weird that reputable sources, reputable people told us that this thing was coming and have been building it up since August, at least. Because I mean, we've been hearing about a Switch Pro since the Switch Lite came out. We're getting a new Switch. People have been doing data mining, and people believe that there's a 4K code in there getting everything ready. And then I think we all got too hyped, too up there, and we're like, oh, it's just a OLED model. Yeah. That sucks.
To give the benefit of the doubt to Bloomberg in this case, I am sure that they were considering a Switch upgrade. I'm sure they are still, at this point, considering a Switch upgrade. Because, like, why wouldn't you? There is a huge market out there that, you know, no matter what Nintendo would put out, they would buy it. But also, like, the Nintendo Switch was weird because it's sort of off cycle with the what we would call the main generational cycle of Xbox and PlayStation. So it was a few years off. And even, like, then, it was a bit underpowered compared to what was out at the time, you know, the PS4 Pro and the One X and the One S. So I still think that the reason that these rumors got so blown out of proportion is that of course there is a huge market that would put down 400, 450, even 500 for a thing that runs Breath of the Wild 2 in 4K. Like, they absolutely would. Yes. For Pokemon, stop talking. So it just makes me wonder, if we weren't in the situation where we had the chip shortage, maybe where the Switch wasn't doing so hot, or gaming wasn't doing so hot, would we have the Switch Pro announced at this time instead of the Switch OLED model? I don't know, man. I feel like they need a refresh. I don't know who this serves other than people who don't already have a Switch. Like, I don't think this extends the shelf life of the Switch at all.
Really?
Like, no, because, like, what does an OLED screen even do? The PS Vita had it. What does it do for a game that looks like Pokemon Legends Arceus? Like, if it's still running at
Deeper
27
blacks.
FPS, it's gonna still look old.
Oh yeah. I'm not gonna. But at least those colors will look old together, and you'll be able to actually see the individual pixels. Like, I'm not gonna fight you. Like, trust me, I'm 100% with you on. I would on my dream scenario. We're gonna talk about this later. My dream scenario for a Switch, like, this could have happened. You could have given us 1080p 60 on handheld. This serves people who are really just play this thing on handheld. If you got a first generation Switch, or if you're like me and who has a obsessive thing with a Nintendo and you're going to buy it anyway, that's what it serves. And you know what? It's going to sell like hotcakes.
A Link Between Worlds ran on 60 FPS in the 3DS. Did you know that? I found that out this week. It's crazy.
Wait, really?
Yeah. I don't know if that was. I never owned a 3DS. I don't know if that was a weird thing for that game, but it ran at 60.
What?
Yeah.
And so I wish I had my Switch with me. So this is the thing that I have. I have two of them. Three of them, actually. Rose has one. I've got my old one, and then I got the red one. That thing is 720/30.
Yeah.
But yet the 3DS, I have a 3DS in the other room because I've been messing with it. That thing runs 60.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Now you've upset
some
me,
weird
Finn.
voodoo magic. I don't know. Like, you look at something like Monster Hunter Rise, and like, how does that game look as good as it does on the Switch at this point?
I think Mario is running inside the Switch then on a star and making this thing run beautiful.
Yeah, like, Switch has always been a thing where, up until now, or up until a few years ago, I'd say, the beauty of the Switch was you could port anything to it. You could port console quality games like Doom and stuff. And that's another thing. Doom Eternal, how is it even on the Switch right now? That makes no sense to me. Wizardry. But, like,
Blood
it was
sacrifice.
a thing where everything would come to Switch, and it would be the thing where, like, it's great because it's handheld now, but I don't feel like you can do that now. I feel like it's a thing where if you're playing a game on Switch, it's either your only console and you don't own a PC, or you're playing something that is, like, exclusive or made for Switch specifically, like Monster Hunter, like Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
It's
so
just
pretty much what people have PlayStations for their first party games.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I'm with you. Like, what magic have they done to do this? And, like, how is it going to be harder for developers to actually port to the Switch? Like, now that everyone's pushing 4K 60, 4K 30, 4K 60. Xbox is doing its own thing at 4K 120. Like, is it going to be harder? Again, my understanding is you build for the big and then you take down to the small. So I don't actually know that. My understanding of the development is that's how you do it. You don't go small to big, you go big to small. So I'm wondering, is it going to be an issue for developers to get on the Switch? On top of that, what games that are on the PlayStation 5 that do you want on the Switch? It's that factor too. Like, what games would be fun portable? Like Persona? Yeah, I think that'd be great portable. You got a long RPG going, that'd be great portable. But it's like, what would actually work on it? And don't get me wrong, I want Breath of the Wild 2 to run at 60. I don't care if it's 1080. I just want it to run at 60.
Yeah. 1080 60 would be a great time. 720 60 would even be better. Like, to be honest.
That would be fine.
Yeah.
Some sort of magic will happen. But I looked into this and I got upset. Minus what you just told me about freaking the 3DS running at 60. That upsets me. And I found a tweet from Matt Piscatella and I was like, this is exactly Nintendo. This is 100% Nintendo, and it's made so much sense.
Go follow Matt Piscatella, by the way.
Oh yeah,
good people.
Great man. I love that dude. Back in the day, Nintendo portable revisions would stabilize the demand curve and firm up ASPs. They would be about maintaining sales performance and preventing the pool of price drops and stale inventory. I'm sorry. The Switch OLED is right out of this successful playbook. All they're doing is going, hey, here's a new shiny thing, and you're going to buy it. And we don't have to price. We're actually increasing the price. We don't have to price drop this thing, which I think that is kind of a weird deal. I think they should have went at the 300 and then price dropped everything else by 50.
And that's why I think like the thing is weird about mentioning, like, as you mentioned, Nintendo telling developers to be 4K ready, because I think that implies that whatever like the Switch Pro that we all imagined was way further along than like just considering. And so I do go back to, you know, if this wasn't a pandemic year, if we didn't have a chip shortage, would we be looking at an actual Switch Pro right now? And I think we would. I think Nintendo were at the stage of considering, maybe a bit further along than that, the Switch Pro with the NVIDIA graphics DLSS 4K stuff. But I think they looked at, you know, what they would be able to output in terms of supply, how that would affect sales. Would it really affect sales if we, you know, put out this beefy Switch out there if we're not going to be able to put the things in people's hands anyway because we can't make enough? And so I wonder if it's just like, okay, well, no matter what we do, we have an upper limit to how many Switches we can sell. So let's just slap an OLED screen on there. I also wonder, like, maybe is this an indication that the Switch's life cycle is going to be less than we thought? Maybe they want, you know, more than just an update. Maybe they want a whole refresh with like a whole new system, the next thing after the Switch. I don't know what they're looking at, but
through.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like what is the definition of being like halfway through according to Nintendo? Like we're on year, what is it, 2017, 21, year 5? Year 5. So, I mean, are we going to go another 5 years with this thing, or is it like done in four years?
Yeah, so
like, when do we get this? The Switch Pro that like everyone wants. When do we actually get this?
Yeah, so the PS3 went about 8 years, but that was artificially inflated because of the financial crisis in 2008. Then the PS4 and Xbox went about the same length of time, maybe a little bit shorter, but they had refreshes in the middle. They had the PS4 Pro and the Xbox Series X. I think that's what we're thinking. Like, we knew the Switch had legs. It just needed a little push. I think that's why people are upset, because I don't think, like, in 4 years' time, how old is the Switch going to feel? You know?
No, I'm with you. Like, in another 4 years, if we're still playing on the same hardware, like, technology updates all the time. We just had a technology update. There, I mean, minus the fact that Nintendo's the only console maker that sells at a profit. And they're still trying to, and it's a sales concept to be cheaper, give you the games you want, because you have Mario, you've got Zelda, you're getting Samus back again. We've got all these games that you can play, and you don't have to fork out $500 for a PS5 or a Series X, or $2,000 for a computer, and you still get high quality games. So I wonder, is that part of the sales strategy of maybe Nintendo kind of weaning us into, all right, you're going to have to spend a little bit more when the Switch Pro actually comes out.
Yeah. Or else they're like really overly confident about streaming tech and where that's going to be in a few years' time.
Oh, God.
Because, like, again, you go back to the point you made about Guardians of the Galaxy. And, like, I thought initially that was Switch Pro. Obviously, it's not. So, like, the thing you said about streaming, that is absolutely being streamed. There's no way that game runs natively in any sort of quality way on a Switch. So it just feels weird. It just feels like way older now than it did a week ago. You know what I mean?
I actually follow you on that one. And it's what's happened is not precedent. I know you had it up, and I mean, I made a full-on timeline of every DS ever about how long it stayed in a cycle, and all they did was just kind of iterate on it. You get a better screen, it's a little bit bigger. And then the new 3DS and the new 3DS XL came out, and that had a different processor, and 5 or 6 games took advantage of it. And that was it. So it's not un-Nintendo-like to do this. And for me, like, I really do believe that this Switch is now, this is going to be your baseline Switch in a year.
Yeah.
V1 is going to stop production, and they're slowly going to pull back V2 where you can't find it anymore. And I think this one, the OLED Switch, OLED as it will, is going to be the number one Switch. This is the Switch you're going to find. And now I really, in my head, if I am Nintendo and I am the king of making something crazy, we perfected motion controls. We made a console that you can take on the go. I'm going to put money down. We don't have to do this as a bet, but I'm really, really considering and thinking that we are going to get a dock that puts it out in 4K. I think that's what's going to happen.
See, that's like Druid witchcraft.
But it's a USB-C dock, and so I'm like, it can carry all that. And you have a dock that actually has an external GPU. It connects to your TV, and you're doing 4K. I think that is how this is going to happen. There's no way else. They don't want to put more into the Switch because they still want to make it cheap enough for families to buy. Yeah. Nintendo, at the end of the day, is a family company that they want families. They want multiple Switches in there. So what's easier to do? You can buy Switches. Everyone in your family can have a Switch. Oh, you want to do 4K on the Switch that can actually be docked? Here is a $200 dock that has an external GPU. You pop that bad boy in there, and you got 4K. Yeah. And then anyone can use it.
Mm-hmm. I would love that. I would legitimately pay $300 for a dock that outputs in 4K.
I think everyone would. Yeah. Because now we're like, we've got $350 on the OLED, or you can actually, it's the same chip processor, so you can use your normal Switches that you have. If you don't have an OLED screened one, pay $300 for a new dock that has the external GPU. You're now $600 in on a Switch playing 4K 60, or again, hell, 1080 60.
Yeah, I don't know. That sounds like, because there was those rumors like when it was called the NX when we were in prototype phase that, and this was like some crazy stuff. Like we were in La La Land when we were thinking this, but there were prototypes that suggested that you could like bring your NX to a friend's house and put it like slot it into their NX, and you'd have double the power, and like you could just keep stacking them up. I like that was nuts, but
daisy
chain
like these GPUs.
So you could just slot your like stupid little handheld Switch into like the beef dock. That would be a good time. But no, it's just my entire perception of what the Switch has changed on a dime. Because at the start, I thought it was, this is Nintendo's new console. This is the evolution of the N64 and the GameCube, and it has handheld capabilities, killing their handheld business. Yeah. Instead, what it was is that the handheld business took over the console space. But now, like, the comparison that you made to like the DS and the 3DS cycles is like super accurate, because that's what they're doing right now. But at those times, you also had, it's a weird comparison, but you also did have the Wii. You had the Wii U, you had the GameCube, whatever, along with their handhelds. And like that, I feel like there's a gap there now for the people who want the cutting edge, just sort of like industry enthusiasts, the people with too much money, more money than sense. Yeah. Like they want a Switch Pro, like a proper one. And I want one.
Yeah. I mean, I do too. Don't get me wrong. I think having a proper one, we're going to see the business and the technology of Nintendo real fast within the next year or two, depending on how. And I think, and you've been like pointing at it, as I wonder what the chip shortage will do now. Like we're at this point now is no one can get their hands on a Series X or S. No one can get their hands on a PlayStation 5. You need to just be Johnny on the spot. If someone tweets, you go grab it. You don't blink. Nintendo, I want to see how well the OLED is in stock. Like, how easy is it going to be to pick up? Because that's going to dictate what Nintendo does.
Yeah.
Because if it's hard to find, people will obviously not buy it.
But
if people decide not to buy it in general because it's not enough, then that's going to force them to really look at where the state of consoles are in general. Because PlayStation and Xbox have both said, screw it, we're coming after you, PC gaming. While Nintendo is still hanging out in the Wii era.
Yeah. I think where the disappointment comes from, like to put a bow on this, is that this announcement, or like the lack of announcement of a Switch Pro, makes me less excited for the future of Nintendo software. Like, I'm way less excited for Breath of the Wild 2. I'm way less excited for Mario Odyssey 2 or the weird Donkey Kong game. Like, it feels like they've put walls up and like there's less ambition possible to go after. And so I just wonder if this is their way of saying like, hey, we're shortening the life cycle of the Switch and there's going to be a next thing coming up sooner.
Yeah.
Or whether this is like, we got to hunker down because the Switch is here to stay and it's not getting refreshed. So I don't know.